Welcome to the Radiant Visalia podcast. Join us at one of our two services, 9 a.m. and 10:45 a.m. Download the Church Center app or visit our website, radiantvisalia.com, to stay connected with us. All right, enjoy.
There is a heavenly city that I'm compelled to find.
Hey, we're in a series as a church on tensions and how we live in the tensions. And as a church, we do have positions. We have a statement of faith. We have some things that are fixed. We don't, these are in a closed fist. They're not up for debate. And we have positions. But then in many places, our position as a church is to live in a tension that exists between two things that can seem at times to be a paradox. That we want to live in the tension, that we don't want to let go of certain things in order to embrace other things, that we don't want to let go of these things in order to embrace the other things. So there are some paradoxes that show up in Christianity. And we as a church are committed to living in tension and not swinging to either side. The reason we're communicating this, because for some of you who've been a part of this church for a long time, you're hearing this for a second time. We preached these sermons 4 years ago. The reason that we're saying it again is because this stuff is foundational for us. It's something of a measuring stick. We'll keep coming back to it. We'll keep reminding you, hey, we're committed to living in grace and truth. And you seem like you've let go of grace to reach with two hands for the truth. And you need to remember the truth of God's grace. We'll continue to remind you that there's a tension between the super and the natural. And if you've let go of the super part, that God can intervene, and you're reaching with two hands to the natural, we'll come in as leaders in this church and say, no, remember, we live in this tension. We embrace this tension, and we don't swing to one side or the other. So this is foundational for us. We'll continue to live in this. We'll continue to talk about this. This is not, Trav broke his foot and now he needs a break from preaching, so he's going to re-preach these old things. These things are very alive for us, and we'll continue to live into this stuff. We'll continue to remind you of these tensions. You're clear? Today, I want to talk about the tension that exists, and I don't know that I did a great job of teeing that up for you, but like last week, Jared talked about the tension that exists between being a community that's cohesive, that is, we go deep, and inclusive, that is, we go wide. It's possible to go wide at the expense of going deep. It's possible to go deep at the expense of going wide. We want, as a church, to be both cohesive and inclusive. We see that in Jesus' life, right? He had a group of 12 that he was going deep with. He was maturing them. He was doing life on life with these 12. But then he was also ministering to the crowds, and there was a great invitation for all to come to him who were thirsty. So we want to be both cohesive and inclusive. We don't want to be deep at the expense of going wide. We don't want wide at the expense of going deep. We want to live in this tension together. Today I want to talk about the tension that exists between intimacy and involvement. Today I want to talk about the tension that exists between being connected and committed. Today I want to talk about the tension that exists between relationship and responsibility. How many of you have ever experienced this tension before? That you are in these relationships, but because you're in these relationships, you now have some responsibilities. And because these responsibilities are so intense, you don't have any time for these relationships. And so sometimes we can swing towards being committed without connection, and then other times we can be connected at the expense of being committed. And we want both those things. We want intimacy and involvement. We see that in the life of Jesus, and we want that here in this church. Not intimacy at the expense of our involvement, not involvement at the expense of intimacy with God, but both of those things is what we're contending for. When's the last time you ran out of gas? Do you run out of gas? I do often run out of gas. I have run out of gas twice in the same day. I ran out of gas. I went and bought a gallon, that the red thing, container, I guess maybe the word. What are the kids calling it these days? Containers? It's a gas can. So except for they're not cans anymore. It's not recyclable. They're made of paper. So I get this gas can. I fill it up. It's got a gallon in it. I figure I'm going to get 20 miles to the gallon. Well, that day I got 17 miles to the gallon. I ran out of gas again and I had to walk to the gas station again. So running out of gas is a frequent thing for me, and that's not because I don't have any money to put gas in my tank. It's not because we need to take bigger offerings here at Radiant. Trav has no money to fill up his gas tank. The reason I run out of gas is because I'm behind, and I can't stop. Because if I stop, if I actually take the time to refuel, I'm going to be even later to the event. So I keep pushing it, and I keep pushing it. I think, I can get to church. I know I can't get back from church, but I know I can get there. And once I get there, well, then I'll have time to refuel, and I'll drive right there to the Chevron station. And what happens for me is I feel like I don't have any time. I'm so committed that I don't have any time to connect. I don't have any time to refuel. That if I stop to connect, I'm going to drop the things that I've committed to do. Anybody ever experienced this tension? And I'm torn. I was torn. I got home this week. I was gone most of the week. I got home on Friday. I've been gone for 6 days. And of course, there is this desire, this need for me to connect with my kids. Tiff's been doing bedtime without me for 6 days. And so I get home, and there's a desire in me to connect. And then there's also these things that I've committed to do. And sure enough, on Saturday, as I'm listening to Avery, she's talking to me, and I'm trying to connect. But I'm also thinking about my commitments. I got to speak tomorrow. What am I going to speak on? How's that going to go? I wonder what songs Jared chose. It's like I've got these commitments, and they're in the way of my connection. And it's not just that way with Avery. I feel that way with God himself. Like, I'm so busy, doing things for you. I don't really feel like I have any time to be with you. And even being with you feels like something I'm supposed to do for you. Anybody ever experienced that before? Well, I need to do this prayer thing where I connect with God. So, okay, let's connect because I got to get this over with because I got these other things I need to do. And it would be helpful if I connected with you before I did those things. Of course, this tension that we've all experienced, even if you're not a God follower, you've experienced this tension before. Like, what do we do with, again, relationship and then responsibility? How do we have both of those things? Not one at the expense of the other, but both of those things. This tension is forever represented in the story of Mary and Martha. And I'll read it to you out of Luke. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said, but Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care? My sister has left me to do the work by myself. Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you're worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed, actually only one. And Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. No doubt those that are here and are busy, like you're doers, you struggle to be. You've probably even been called a Martha before, right? Those of you who just love and can't get enough of his presence have probably been called a Martha. This tension that exists is forever represented in these two ladies. And you've experienced this before too, where, like this guy Brandon is coming to stay at my house. Well, guess what else happened? A bunch of girls stayed at my house last night for a sleepover. So my house is thrashed. So what we'll do for the next 3 hours is try to make our house look presentable so that we can welcome Brandon and Rebecca into our home. So I will go home and it'll be like, let's do this. We've got company coming over. Finley, quit standing around with your hands in your pocket. It's like we've got people coming over and we need to clean this up. Well, Jesus and his disciples, they didn't have a phone. They didn't text hey, we're going to drop in. He just showed up with 12 hairy guys. And Mary and Martha were like, golly, we were not planning on you guys coming. All of a sudden, Mary camps at his feet, and Martha starts going, oh, man, we need to clean this place up. I had no idea company was coming over. So she starts cleaning up. No doubt she's doing it really loudly and in Mary's face so as to get Mary's attention. You've done that before, right? Cleaned real violently so as to get your husband's attention. Oh, don't mind me while you watch the game. I'm just vacuuming. Just So finally, sorry. That's never happened in my house, by the way. So finally, Martha, Mary's not taking the hint. And Martha's just like, Jesus, tell her to get moving. This will happen to me this afternoon. I'll send Remy and Finley to clean their room. Remy will work and Finley won't. Remy will then come to me and say, Finley is not doing anything. I'm cleaning this all up by myself. Do something. So that's what Martha did. I'm cleaning this up all by myself. Jesus, do something. And that's when when Jesus responds, Martha, you're worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed. I love this. He says, you know what? A few things are needed. And he goes, no. Actually, there's only one thing that's needed. And Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. She chose relationship in that moment, and we're still reading about it. As a church, if we're going to go forward, and my hope is that we will go forward together, if we're going to press on, it will be on the legs of intimacy and involvement. Not one at the expense of the other, but both and. And our enemy, our adversary, is determined to keep us from advancing. And he will seek to cripple your intimacy or your connection with God, or he will seek to cripple your engagement socially in the things in society around us. Here's the beautiful thing about Jesus, and I love this about him, is that he says both come and go. If you read the Gospels, if you read the account of his life and how he got on with his friends, he says both come and go. There are times where Jesus is saying, come to me, and I will make you fishers of men. And then there are other times where he says, go, heal the sick, cast out demons. And so there's both of these things. If you're going to follow Jesus, be obedient to Jesus, you should expect that Jesus will say both come, connect with me, and go, engage in society. He'll say both of those things. But my observation as a pastor for not very long, I've not been a pastor for a long time, is that there are some of us that have a real easy time hearing Jesus say go. We're like, go? Yeah, heard that, picked up on that, I'm gone. And there are others who have an easy time hearing Jesus say come. Come? Oh, that's what I wanted to do anyways. Done with this. Some of us struggle to hear Jesus say go. What's that? I'm sorry, I can't hear you real well. Some of us struggle to hear Jesus say come. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit busy right now. When I get this done, I'll come for sure. And we struggle. We have kids, or some of us have kids. If you don't have kids, I can loan you one, but I have 5 of them. And maybe I told you about my house. We won't go back into that, but we have kids who are runners, and we have kids that are clingers. I tried to drop a clinger off last night for a sleepover. And she packed, toothbrush, all excited, and she got there, and it was like, ain't happening. I'm coming home, And then I have daughters like Remy and Penny, and they don't know you, but they would stay at your house. They're not worried about it, And it's funny, you can watch runners and clingers at these doors, at that 2-year-old door, And the clinger, you're saying, go, it's going to be all right. You're not going to die. Go. go, please go. I can't hold you for this long, you know? Please go. And then you've got runners. And the runners start approaching the classroom from out here by these dumpsters. And you're like, stay next to us. Stay right here. Stop, stay. And it's no different with our Heavenly Father. He's dealing with some clingers in this room. Go. It's not going to kill you. No, it is. No, you'll be fine. And then there's some real doers. There's some real runners in this room where he's like, stop. Hey, I'm talking to you. Stop. If we have intimacy without involvement, that is that we are connected to God without committed, or that we're having relationship, but we're not taking seriously the responsibility we've been given. Because you understand that as Christians, right? We're told that we can have relationship with God. But then also as Christians, we have this responsibility to represent Him, to reflect Him. There's some responsibility that comes with that name. If we have the relationship, but we don't take on the responsibilities that He's given us to reflect Him, we're going to hop around on one leg in a spiritual ghetto. We're going to hop around on one leg in a spiritual ghetto. We're going to have no Christian friends, and it's going to take church programs for us to make meaningful connection with those outside these four walls. Give us a program. Tell me what to say. If you have involvement without an intimacy with God, you will be ineffective. You'll be vulnerable to burnout. Prayer will just become a rubber stamp for your plans rather than a rudder to steer our thoughts and actions. And you'll end up stressing out with Martha while Mary chooses the better thing to connect. Again, I want to stress that we want both. We want both of these things. Together, they form a stride. And we see the stride in Jesus' life, right? Together, there's a rhythm to it. There's a cadence to it. It's a beautiful thing together. We want both of these things. This is a little bit like breathing in and breathing out. There's a rhythm to it. And it brings life. I'd like to have my own competition up here for a man camp scholarship, and I'd ask one man to just breathe out, and I'd ask the other man to just breathe in, and then I'd see who passes out first, and then I'd give that guy a scholarship because he passed out in front of us, and we all laughed, and it was worth it. It's worth $165 to watch him collapse. You've been there, though, before, right? Where it's just going out. Nothing's coming in. Breathing out. Burn out. Pass out. Collapse. And the same thing will happen if you breathe in. You'll become apathetic. You won't recognize the opportunities to engage when Jesus says, go. We see this beautiful rhythm in His ministry. Before He chooses the 12 disciples, which is like really engaging, right? I mean, going and making disciples. But before He chooses the 12 disciples, He spends the entire night alone in prayer. When He received the news of the death of John the Baptist, it says that He withdrew from there in a boat to a lonely place. After He miraculously fed 5,000, it was like, I need even my disciples to leave right now. And then He dismissed the crowd and He went up to the hills by Himself. Following a long night of work, He woke up early and He went out to a lonely place. Following the healing of a leper, Jesus withdrew to the wilderness and He prayed. Man, if anybody could have just breathed out, it was Him, right? I mean, 30 years in preparation, it's like, okay, you've been breathing in and out for 30 years. For these next 3, what we need you to do is just out, breathe out. If anyone could have done it, it was Jesus. And here he is, needing to breathe in. If anybody didn't have time to stop for gas, it was him, right? It's like, we've got stuff to do. We're going to turn the world upside down. You've got 3 years to revolutionize this whole thing. You've got 3 years to do something that people will still be talking about thousands of years later. You better make an impact. If anybody didn't have time to go to Chevron, it was him. With 3 disciples, he sought out the silence of a lonely mountain as the stage for the transfiguration. And then as he prepared for the cross, it wasn't a series of meetings, but he sought solitude in the garden. This is crazy to me. But like after 30 years of waiting, he begins his ministry by going to the desert for 40 days. You ever hired anybody that like immediately asked for time off? It's like, this is the wrong decision we just made. All right, so I want the job. I'll tell you what, I'm going to need the first 40 days off, though. Like, you're going to get more than 40 days off, buddy. You're the wrong guy for this job. Because when I hire someone, I've got like a long list of things that they need to do, and they better get on it to prove themselves and to perform. When Jared came on, it wasn't like, hey, for these first 2 days, just seek solitude and ask the Father what to do. No way. You don't need to ask God what to do. I have a list for you, Jared, and it's long, and you should get after it, or else you'll be getting after something else. That's not how it goes, by the way. It's just amazing. And then he goes to the desert, and he faces one big temptation. There were many, but they all kind of fly under the same banner. And the temptation is this: will you act apart from God? Will you do when you've been asked to rely on him? It's as if the first thing God wanted to teach Jesus is to embrace his limits. That was really wild. The first thing he wanted to teach him is to embrace his limits. Have you ever seen that in Scripture? Because I read the Bible and I get super excited about Jesus engaging. All I can see is the way he engages, the way he takes responsibility, the way he moves towards messes. All I see is the way he steps in and makes a difference. And I love that about him. But have you ever seen him? He withdraws. He embraces his limits as a way of glorifying God. We think that the best way to glorify God is to say yes to everything. And sometimes our yes is faithless. And it requires more faith to say no and to trust that the world goes on without you being involved in it. He didn't heal everybody. In fact, he walked through places where there were a lot of sick people, and he only healed one of them. He didn't stay in cities where they begged him to stay. He sent crowds away, and then he didn't chase after them. And at the end of his life, he prayed, I have completed the work you gave me to do. I've made the relationships you've asked me to make, and I've taken on the responsibilities that you had for me. And at the end of your life, you won't be held accountable for how much you've done. It's not just a quantity thing. You'll be held accountable for how much you have done of what he asked you to do. Not everything is your responsibility. And I know I struggle with that. And if you're here and you're a doer, you struggle with this. It's hard to differentiate between a concern and your responsibility. And you just assume that if it concerns you, it's your responsibility. And so as a pastor, there's a lot of things that concern me. And then I take these things on, all these responsibilities, and my relationships suffer as a result of it. My relationship with God himself, not just with friends and family. We get this incredible picture of intimacy from John 15. You can turn there if you want to, or you can trust me to read it to you. John 15, so as I talk about both and, intimacy and involvement, relationship, and the responsibility that comes with relationship, connection with God, and then commitment in what we're doing. Because it's a both and deal. Many in my generation living with a phobia of commitment because you fear that you won't be connected in it. Well, I watched my dad work some dead-end job his whole life, and I'll be darned if I'm going to do that. I'm going to chase my dreams. I'm going to live out my heart. We won't be able to reflect Him without commitment. The context of this passage is that this is the final board meeting. Jesus is about to hand the whole company over to a company of disciples. And you can imagine, as the leader of a home or as someone who's employed in the school district, like what kind of a list do you make for the sub that steps in? What do you say to the babysitter who comes over and is trying to take over your job? What would you say to somebody who's going to backfill? Let's just dream, because it's Sunday, that you don't have to go to work on Monday. What would you say to the poor sucker who does? The guy who's going to backfill your position. Well, he needs to know this and he needs to know that. This is it. Jesus is sitting with these guys, and he's got a lot that he can tell them, more than they can bear. And so it's worthwhile to notice what Jesus chooses to say, because he's about to dip out. This is what you guys have to remember as you go forward. He could have talked about a bunch of things. Hey guys, you're about to oversee a worldwide phenomenon. A worldwide phenomenon. You're about to oversee this entire movement, and you've only been here for 3 years. He could have listed out a bunch of stuff. He could have said, Thomas, you're about to go to India. And what you need to know about India is this. Don't shake with your left hand. They use that left hand for other things. You want to come in with the right hand at all times, Thomas. I don't know. He could have said a bunch of stuff about India. This is what Jesus says at this final board meeting. I'm the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that it'll be even more fruitful. Now pick this up. Jesus is serious about this impact. He's serious about you bearing fruit. It's a big deal to him. Even the good stuff is going to get cut back because it's not best, and I want what's best. You're already clean because of the word I've spoken to you. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up and thrown into the fire and burned. If you remain in me, and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit. Again, Jesus, he's serious about fruitfulness. This is about my Father's glory. This isn't just about your destiny or you having an impact or you doing what's in your heart to do. This is about the glory of God the Father. As the Father has loved me, Jesus says, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You're my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant doesn't know his master's business. Instead, I've called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father I've made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and I appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last. And so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command: love each other. This is not short on commands. This is not short on Jesus being Lord. I command you to do these things. I appoint you to bear much fruit. I brought you on staff to produce. So what should we do? Remain in me. Did you not pick up on the drum that's being beat over and over again? So what do? We're about to take this company over. What should we do? Stay connected to me. Stay in a vital relationship with me, and you will bear fruit. If you put relationship before this responsibility, you will pull off these responsibilities. You will produce fruit. Stay in me. Remain in me. If my words remain in you, and remain over and over again. Stay connected. Stay close. Stay in a vital, life-giving relationship with me, and these responsibilities will take care of themselves. It'll flow out of a connection with me. Jesus was pushing for fruitfulness, but not at the expense of faithfulness. He's saying, if you remain faithful to me, you will be fruitful. It's not an either-or thing for us. Well, we can either be faithful to him or fruitful. It's like, no, not faithfulness at the expense of fruitfulness, or fruitfulness at the expense of our faithfulness to him. But both of these things together, a relationship and a responsibility to reflect him and impact our world by producing fruit. Remain in me, and you will bear fruit. Abide in me. Stay connected. Stay vitally connected to me, and you will produce fruit, is what he decides to say to these guys that are going to lead the movement. Stay close. Stay close. Thomas, when you go to India, stay really, really connected to me. I'll tell you whether to go or whether to come. Stay connected with me. Stay in a relationship with me. And at times, I'll say, come, Thomas, retreat. And I'll say, go, Thomas, you've got to go. Heal the sick. Cast out demons, Thomas. I will say that to you, but you've got to stay close. You've got to stay near me. And this is the idea for us. This is what we're excited about. I'm not excited about life like for God. I'm not excited about life from God. I'm excited about life with God. I don't want to just go and I don't want to just come. I want to be with him. And part of remaining with him means that we hear him say go and we hear him say come. If you want to stay with him and stay in step with him, then it's going to require obedience. When he says sit down, you sit down. And when he says go, you go. And that's what this is all about for us, is that we're called to life with God. Not just a life for God where we make an impact. Or not just life from God, like we're going to sit at his feet. Like he's some like pinata who drops what we need and then we go. Well, just give me what I need so that I can go on with it. No. It's like we need his presence. His presence is what we want. His presence is what we need. We want life with God. This is the promise of heaven. Jesus is not a means to get to heaven. Heaven is being in the presence of God. It's his presence that we long for. It's to be with him that we long for. It's not like, well, I'll get with you so that I can get on to this place called heaven. Heaven itself is being in his presence forever. It is our life. So the goal is life with God, remaining with him, which involves intimacy and involvement. I don't love mission. I love being with God, and God is on mission. I don't love sitting down. I've hated that part of being injured. The 3 weeks of bed rest, I was the biggest grouch because I couldn't do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. I hate laying down. You know what I hate worse than laying down? Life apart from God. Stay here. Plant yourself by streams. All right? Yeah, all right, I'll sit here, Then he finds me just creeping off, Moses is what I'll end with. God appears to Moses in a burning bush. You ever heard this story before? And if you haven't, it's in Exodus chapter 3, but God comes to Moses and he says, Moses, I want you to lead my people out of captivity, out of bondage, out of Egypt. And Moses has a very typical response. The response is this: who am I to take this job? Who am I to lead your people out of Egypt? Who am I to take a stand against Pharaoh? Who am I? And the Lord answers him and essentially says to him, well, you are who you are because I am going with you. My presence is going to go with you. And that's not, in Exodus 3, that's not good enough for Moses. He needs something tangible. He needs something dazzling. Well, no. Give me something more than your presence, because your presence isn't going to cut it. And so fast forward to Exodus chapter 33, and Moses has done it. He's led the people out of captivity, and if something tangible and dazzling is what he wanted, that's what he got, because there was a massive fireworks show in order for him to lead the people out of Egypt. And in Exodus 33, Moses has led the people back to the place where he received his call, and now he's up on Mount Sinai and he's getting the 10 Commandments. You've heard of those before? So he's up, he's getting the 10 Commandments while God is etching things into stone and giving the people these commands. The people down below are making and worshiping idols. And God knows this, and he gets so furious that he wants to wipe them out. And then Moses intercedes, and God backs down. All right, I won't wipe them out. In fact, God says they will go into the promised land, but here's the deal. I'm not going to be with them. I'm not going to be with them. I'm going to send an angel to lead them. I don't want to be with them. In fact, God says this: I will not go with you because you're a stiff-necked people, and I might destroy you on the way. You're a stiff-necked people, and I might destroy you on the way. So I'm going to send an angel with you, okay, Moses? That's fine. I won't wipe them out. It's cool. I'm going to send an angel to lead them because I don't want to go with you guys. And this is what Moses says: if your presence does not go with us, do not send us. I don't want to leave from this place. And it's just a beautiful picture. In Exodus chapter 3, God's presence was not enough for Moses. But his relationship with God matured. And now in Exodus 33, Moses is saying, if I don't have your presence, I'm not going. You're it. You're it for me. Your presence is life to me. And I won't go if you don't go. And that cry coming from Moses' heart moved the Lord. Moses is essentially saying, I want relationship before I want the responsibility of this. And I won't take on the responsibility of this without relationship with you. And so that's the big idea, guys. We don't just want to come. We don't just want to go. We want life with God. We want to remain in him, which involves both coming and going, obeying him when he speaks into our lives. I love this picture in Revelation 21 because this is about the promise that we're given, what our future looks like with God. It's about the new heavens and the new earth. Revelation 21 says, look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. No longer life for God, no longer life from God, no longer life under God or over God. Life with God is the promise, the eternal promise that we've got our eyes set on. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. This is an eternal promise for us, but we want that now. I hunger for that now, that we would experience life with God. And being with him involves remaining in him, and it involves coming and going when he speaks. Would you stand? just as an act of surrender, I would invite you to just open your hands before him. God, we just want to say to you that it's not that we want mission necessarily. We just want to be with you. It's not just that we want an impact. It's that we want to be with you where you are. And where you are is making an impact. And we just want to surrender our lives to you. If you want to say come, then we want to obey you. If you're asking us to sit down, then we want to sit down. And trust that our identity is not found in what we do. Our identity is found in you and what you've said about us. And so we want to have the courage to rest in what you've done. We want to have the courage to trust you and get gas and refuel and connect. I pray for those here who struggle to connect, that you would give them a way to enjoy relationship with you. Beyond doing things for you, that they would enjoy relationship with you. I pray for those of us who don't want to go and fear that God's going to send us someplace. I thank you that your commands are set up for our joy. That our joy will be made complete as we obey what you command. And so we trust you. We trust you, God. We trust you. We trust you. Tune our ears as a church to hear you say, come and go. We want to remain in you, and we want to bear fruit as a church. So I just bless the people here. Those that are burned out, I bless them. Those that are struggling, what does this mean to remain in God? This is awkward. I bless them. Just pray for courage for both groups to step outside of what's comfortable for them. That we'd walk on as a church. Amen.
Thanks for listening. We want to be a resource for you as you walk with Jesus. So please connect with us at radiantvisalia.com. Until next time.
There is a heavenly city that I'm compelled to find. Though I love the flowers and trees and the smell of the grinding sea and all the beautiful things here in life. And I